there's several key things, and I would say that the top one probably is for publics, but especially parliaments, to sort of stare down the issue of how much fiscal stimulus can each country undertake, each of the 20 countries undertake. Because the important principle that operates here is a very simple one in economics, that once you get trade to be as big a percentage of the economy as it currently is in many of the major countries, that's how they got to be major, is in part through rapid trade growth, is you get big multiplier effects between major economies like this when everybody expands together rather than a couple doing it on their own and others not, or doing it at different times and so on. So the synchronization or coordination of the fiscal expansion on the part of the 20 countries is something that needs to be discussed in the run-up to the April 2nd summit, but certainly afterwards as well with parliaments, to make sure that they follow through and that all countries expand in a significant way. The second thing I would say is that there is the Copenhagen meeting of the UN conference on climate change, which is in December. And I think these 20 countries are also the major emitter economies. So if you could get agreement among the climate negotiators of the 20 countries as a result of some mandate from their leaders to go to work over the summer and come up by the fall with a framework of elements that would constitute and could constitute important foundations for a broader agreement at the UNFCCC in December in Copenhagen, I think it would make a big difference in terms of progress going into the Copenhagen meeting. And finally, not everybody in the public realizes the importance of the International Monetary Fund, but now everybody in the public, I think, probably realizes that financial flows and having a financial institution to plug holes in the system when it starts to happen and provide liquidity and finance for when it dries up is clear to everyone now around the world. So the IMF becomes a centerpiece of the discussion, which needs to go on out beyond the leaders in parliaments and public still again. And I think there the issue is big. It's, how much resources? $1 trillion worth of resources, perhaps additional resources for the IMF, so there can actually be a real player in the now enormous capital markets of the world. Hence a different role for the IMF. And not unimportantly, a different structuring of the IMF to include the countries in Asia where all the surplus foreign exchange reserves are now being held. But it's not that we need to include Asia because they have foreign exchange reserves, but we need to include Asia because they are now the big economies with big populations. They are a major part of the world on every issue that is of concern to the whole globe. And just as a matter of democracy at the global level, we need to include Asia in a much more fundamental way in the IMF. So there are these three issues of sort of resources, the role of the fund, and the governance of it, which need to be sort of looked at by leaders and discussed in parliaments and hopefully push through a major change in the role of the fund in the years ahead.